Are you troubled by strange noises?
Came out a 6-foot black silhouette of a cowboy with a cowboy hat. He had a duster on.
You said there's lights in the sky?
Yeah, there's a 4 lights. It's moving real slow. Real slow.
It's showtime.
The Emmett Blackwell Show, diving into the creative minds of sci-fi, horror, fantasy, and paranormal authors. Their fantasy is our reality. Welcome once again to the Emmett Blackwell Show. Before we begin, I want to remind everybody to subscribe and like the YouTube videos. Share it if you wish. It's a great way to get these authors out there. I have special guest author Richard Letrouneau here to talk about a couple of his works, the Newtown series and the new Shadows series with the newest book, Lillith's Puppet. Richard, are you there?
Hello, yes, I am indeed, yes. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much for being here. So, this Newtown series, what inspired that initially?
That goes an awful long way back. I'm not that old. But it was, I think I was about 13 or 14 at the time, and I was just in my mother's car, and I had my notepad with me. I often go out with a notepad, even back then. And I was just picking up my brother's, and I started to write stuff down, and I didn't know where it would go, and it just started to grow further and further. And I ended up with about 3 or 4 stories out of it, short stories. And then some years later, I lost the pad.
No.
So that I was quite gutted after that.
So
but then all these years later, now I've just 30 come up for 32 now. I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually take some time and try and write as many of those stories as I can. If I can't do it perfectly, I'll just create another lot and just keep the whole name of the town, which was Newtown, which I didn't know at the time back then is the name of a real town over in England, and there's actually quite a few Newtons around. I was like, okay, this is interesting. Okay, so it's based on a real place. Okay, so I've got to do my research now. So
well, don't be surprised if someday you go to Newtown and all of a sudden you've got quite a bit of a following there. So because that can happen. So now the town, the actual fictional town that you have in this series, was this kind of based on experiences that you had in your personal hometown?
No, none at all. Nothing at all. Everything is just like it could be a momentary, I might have a little vision of something and I think, that's quite good, that's quite sick, that could be quite scary.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll just start writing it down, or I'll just do a few, get many of my notepads out and a few pens. If I can't find a pen, I'll get quite moody for a few minutes till I find one of the many that I've got lying around. So it's just all about getting a few notes down and then just start writing, basically, and just it ends up flowing into something, or just becomes nothing for a short while until you get around to doing it again.
Yeah, so in the Newtown series, that has a total of how many books now?
6 short stories.
And are they like chronological, or do they have like a connection between them, or are these stories just kind of a place in time, a place in time, a place in time?
Yeah, the best thing about them, I thought, was that I didn't want to make a whole bunch of stories that you have to buy them in the series, you have to follow it here and there. Each one of them takes place in a different time period. Well, 3 of them are in the 1800s and the other 3 are modern times. So I wanted to make sure that each one, you could just pick it up, read it. Doesn't matter if you've read any of them before, because each one follows a different character. Mm-hmm. And they sort of run along the same timeline. So the second book and the third book, events that are happening in that, and they each are pretty much in the same world, same events are going on alongside each other.
So, and you can find that on Amazon.com, correct?
Yes, right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and that's the thing. I'm already looking at purchasing a couple of these tonight, just because it looks so interesting, and the fact that I can just pick one up, read it, enjoy it, and then go about the series non-chronologically is an amazing idea, because we see a lot of those stories out there to where it's, if you miss book 1, there's no way that you would ever be able to get book 3. So, I'm sure that your readers appreciate that, because we're all busy. So, and that's another thing too I want to ask you. With everything that you've got going on, you have a family and things like that. How do you find time to write?
I just sit at my computer every time I get a chance, because it's in my living room, so I've got the kids running around, so I'm running after them, as well as trying to get a bit of writing done every time I get a chance. So usually it's done either when they're in school or asleep, so I just try and get a bit of work done. But honestly, on occasions, I just sit down and watch a film or I'm on my game, and I don't get much done. I feel terrible.
That's okay. Procrastination is horrible, and it happens to all of us. So, yeah, and when it comes to the Newton Town series, for the listeners out there, I will be including that link down in the description of the YouTube video, so you can go ahead and check out any one of the 6 books. And you have a new series out. This is called the Shadow series, with the newest book being called, what's the name of that? Lillith's Puppet.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
So what's the premise of Lillith's Puppet?
Ooh. I am quite into demonic possession. I'm a huge fan of The Exorcist, and it scared the crap out of me when I was a little kid. And I thought, this film is absolutely brilliant, but I'm going to sit through it, I'm going to watch it. And then as I started to get older, I thought, I hope I could make something that's as scary, if not scarier, than this. And so I started writing down a few ideas, and then I ended up coming up with came out to be a Lillith's Puppet. I thought, I want to get a group of children in this book, so I'm also a big fan of It as well. So
that's great.
Yeah, I can't get enough of that. So I wanted to get a group of friends, children at the time, about 11, 12 years old, and they're going to go venturing into the woods, and they're going to find, it's Rachel, she's a big-headed little girl, and so she leads her friends into the woods to go see this swing. Doesn't really mean much now, but in the 1800s, a swing attached to a tree is quite a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so they go there, enjoy their day, then the next day they go back, and there's this woman in there, and she's dying underneath the tree that they was just at. And she throws something into the grass, and the little girl who sees it. So Talia, she goes back there the next day to go and retrieve this necklace, and this necklace is a vessel for the demon Lillith. And so she becomes possessed, and then I won't spoil it too much. I'll go on about it for too long.
That's fine. Now you said that this is kind of like along the lines of that camaraderie that the children have in the book It, and also it kind of plays on the whole concept of The Exorcist. So you've got two kind of mixed genres kind of mashing together here, basically like to terrify your readers. I mean, is that your goal? Is that something that you just love doing every day, is just giving them a little bit of a scare?
I do indeed. I love scaring people. I don't like getting scared myself. I watch a lot of horror films, and as much as I enjoy being scared in some way, in other ways I don't enjoy not knowing what's coming around the corner, but I'll still play the game. And I know what's coming around the corner, but I just hang on for a few minutes and go, should I walk? Should I walk on? It's just a game. I can do this. But I love it. One of my early readers, because I was on Facebook trying to look for new beta readers, and I managed to find one. Heather, I can't remember her last name, but Heather was, and she still follows me now. And one of the book number 4 in the series of Newton Town is actually called Heather's Scar, and her name is Heather. I thought, I'll do something nice where I'll write a book, give her a character her name. So I've done that. She was quite happy about that. That's actually my most popular book out of the whole series, was that one. It's a very deep, dark revenge story.
Well, that's a good thing, and I guess that was kind of a shout out to Heather there for the inspiration. And so that also, the Lillith's Puppet is also on Amazon.com, and for our listeners, I am going to include that one in the description as well for you. Now, the upcoming stories, any upcoming projects that you have going on currently?
I have an awful lot. I have about 30 odd projects, not actually counting the ones that are in the From the Shadow series, because there's 5 books to that one, so I'm not even going to get into that lot. I've got an awful lot going on. One of the main ones that I'm really getting into a lot is one called Killer Lover. Mm-hmm. I might change the name for it, I'm not sure at the minute. But my inspiration for that is just lots of serial killers. I'm quite a fan, I shouldn't say fan really, of Jeffrey Dahmer and other serial killers like that, and he sort of inspired me to get a bit of the work done for that one.
Oh yeah, and when it comes to like real life serial killers, I mean, you know the tragedy behind it, and you know that these are real people that have been murdered in most cases. But the story behind it, the psychosis behind some of these killers, have inspired so many books, and not just in the crime genre, but also in the horror genre and things like that. So it's awesome that you're almost basically pulling from headlines to get an idea, and that's something that, I mean, they'll tell you in schools of writing that, pull from the serial killers, pull from the psychosis of some of these people who are mentally deranged, and you'll be able to put together a good horror story. So, yeah, and that's, I don't know how you're going to find time for 30 more projects. Hopefully you do, because, your writing so far sounds really good, and I'm sure that with each story, it gets more in-depth, better. And with any of the authors out there who may be listening, the key is writing. The key is putting together all your ideas on paper and not worrying about the grammar so much right away. And, if you need to do the same thing Richard does and have a notebook, best to you. And, Richard, as far as new authors that are coming out, what advice would you give to somebody who is kind of getting their feet wet in writing?
What I always say to everyone, and what lots of other writers say, is just write. Don't spend your time thinking about writing or going on social media again, on all these different groups. I've seen it so many times every day. I want to be a writer. What should I write about? Well, I'd like to write. What should I be doing? Well, the answer is write. Just stay off social media for just a few minutes and get some writing done. It's tricky. He's very tricky at times. I've got several windows open all the time, as well as my writing pages open as well. So I'm guilty of that myself. But just get a pad, or several in my case, and lots of pens as well. Can't get enough pens. And just write a few notes, just a few bullet points. You could just start there, and just anything that pops into your head, just get that down. Even if it sounds stupid, you could just get rid of it anyway. Just keep what you want, and you'll start to notice that you'll start getting more and more ideas, and then you can throw that into, say, a short story or a bit of flash fiction, or it will transform into a novella or even a novel just from a few words. Yeah. It's quite good.
And that's the thing, when it comes to writing, talk about one of the cheapest hobbies out there. What type of tools you got? You got paper, you got pens, and you got your imagination. And, you put it just perfect. Just write. Don't worry too much about what you got to do to make it look good. Just get the ideas out on paper. So, like I said before to our listeners, just remember to like and subscribe this video. Share this video. Get Richard's name out there. And, it'll be great for him. And it'll be great for you, because you'll be able to get the experience of knowing how these authors think and what's behind the story that they're already writing. I encourage everybody out there to go ahead and check out the Newtown series and the new Shadow series with Lillith's Puppet. And thank you very much for being here on the Emmett Blackwell Show. I'd like to thank you again, Richard, for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to the show. Keep on reading, keep on writing.
Are you troubled by strange noises?
came out a 6-foot black silhouette of a cowboy with a cowboy hat. He had a duster on.
You said there's lights in the sky?
Yeah, there's a four lights. It's moving real slow. Real slow.
It's showtime.
The Emmett Blackwell Show, diving into the creative minds of sci-fi, horror, fantasy, and paranormal authors. Their fantasy is our reality.